During the recent on-campus celebration in honor of the completion of the brick, Deerfield's new dining hall, I had an opportunity to sit down with two people who were instrumental to the success of the project. President of the Deerfield Academy Board of Trustees, Leila Govi, and trustee, past parent, and New York architect, Dana Tang. Please join me for our special Behind the Project conversation. So we're just coming off an amazing celebration and dedication of the new dining hall. So my first question is this: what was your favorite moment from last night's dedication? I told them I was going to give them zinger questions. And this
you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Yeah, I it's funny. We were talking about this earlier this morning at breakfast. I don't think you were there, John, but I think the most emotional moment was right at the very end, when every student stood up, and actually everyone in the entire dining room, and there was a huge round of applause. And I couldn't quite see at the beginning what was going on because I was at the far end, but it was all the staff that came out, and there was a huge appreciation. It's such a sentimental moment, and the students were not prompted, they were not asked. I don't know if originally if you were going to lead them into that moment, and it just happened so spontaneously as they came out from the kitchen, from the servery area. And I just found that such an emotional moment because it was so heartfelt. So genuine. I love that.
Dana, what do you think?
I think there were two for me. One was watching the first moment that some of the alum saw the space. There's been a lot of talk and a lot of hype and excitement around it.
As an architect, you must be acutely attuned to how people respond to buildings.
Well, it was wonderful to see that the response was across the board, this is an amazing space.
Yes.
Spectacular.
Yes.
They talked about the light, right, the feeling, just the feeling of the space.
Yeah.
And you could see it in people's reactions as they saw it for the first time.
Yeah.
But the second, what will stay with me forever is hearing and watching everyone sing Evensong.
Yeah.
So I don't think I had experienced it in the dining hall before. I've experienced it elsewhere at some of the events when everybody sings it. But seeing all the students arm in arm, lined up, and you could see all the way across the dining hall, everyone together singing.
Yes. Yeah.
Really spectacular.
It happens. It's a regular part of our routine here. It happens every Sunday. The kids do that every Sunday, but it's not something that alums and parents and others get to see. So it's a very stirring moment.
And are you always up there by your lonesome?
I tend not to drape my arms around the kids, so I'm usually standing with a few members of the faculty singing along and watching the kids. So, which is fine for me. I love it. It's my favorite moment. It was actually my introduction to Deerfield before I came that first year. Monica and I drove up in December. We'd come over from Jordan, and it was snowing. We missed the exit on 91 and ended up somewhere in Vermont. We had to turn around, and we arrived for sit-down meal right as the kids were singing the Evensong, which was a great kind of introduction for me. It was like, this is special. And Bob Kaufman mentioned to me this morning that he thought it was great that Ambassador Johnson was warmly applauded, but it was the dining staff that got the standing ovation.
Yes.
Yeah, which was great. So I think one of the things I'd like to do is try to give the audience a sense of the process and how this building came to be. And from your perspective as the president of the board and an architect, what were kind of the non-negotiables? What were the core principles that emerged for each of you over the long multi-year design process?
Should I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's interesting you use the word non-negotiables, because I think the first...
Everything's negotiable.
The first time I heard that
Yeah.
word used, that combination,
Yes.
non-negotiables, was actually on a Zoom meeting with you and Leila when we talked about where the design was at the time when I was first joining the board and what your aspirations were for the dining hall. And I still remember this vividly because I think when you walk into the dining hall today, it's so apparent that those were the non-negotiables. You said there are 3 non-negotiables. One is this should be a singular space. Everyone in the space should feel like they're part of the same space. 2 is that there should be ample natural light. And 3 is that we should have a view to the hills. And what's interesting in thinking about the process is that the 1948 dining hall had those three characteristics. And you saw in the process when asked very specifically, there's so many objectives for a project like this to expand it and accommodate all these different needs.
Yes.
But I think that when forced to really think about what's the most important aspect of this project, you distilled it down to those 3 things. And I think as an architect, those are the 3 things that I care about most also.
Yeah.
I think the perspective I was thinking about, especially as an alumna here, and having spoken to so many other alumni and donors along the way, and students, who were there when I was a student, was just feeling really the heritage of the dining hall from our time there. And the bubbles were always so important and resonated, and ensuring those were somehow protected. How they were going to happen, we didn't know exactly at the moment, but that I think was quite crucial. And there's a vastness of the building when you're on campus from different parts, and as you walk in, and so feeling that, but at the same time having the sense of community when you're in the center of the space, so that when you all come together, it feels integrated and that you're one. And how you do that architecturally was where we had to rely upon, of course, ARC and Dana. But I think it's that nostalgia, ensuring that was protected, because we knew we couldn't mess that part up, and we knew that we would have reunions and gatherings with commencements and all kinds of events in the future where people would want to see some semblance of what it was as their time as a student.
Yeah.
So that was foremost. That was most in my mind.
And I don't think we articulated that immediately in the process, but I think you're totally right. In addition to the creating a dining hall that was one space, not kind of like 3 separate, and the light and the views to the hill, I think over the process we decided that we really wanted to maintain the continuity with the history of the building, so that people walking in there would see something new, but also something that's really familiar and speaks to their experience at the school. Can you describe some of the buildings that weren't built, like some of the dining halls that we considered that ended up on the draft room floor,
Like earlier drafts?
early drafts? Because we went through an extended conceptual moment where we were just trying to think these things through.
I might kick off there and let you fill in. I think that, so when I stepped up as president of the board, which I guess was summer of 24, am I getting that right?
No, 3.
Was the summer of 23?
I think so, yes.
Summer, see, time flies
Yes.
here. So summer of 23, and this was the first, not just the first building project that we had to do as a board, as a school. It was the first event, really, as I stepped up in the role. And so it was the immediate thing on my desk, so to speak, that we had to finalize approval for in terms of drawings and everything. And we already had some discussions heading into that. And and Dana had not yet actually join the board. So it must have been probably in the month leading up to the July when I took over. And the state of play then was one where we had just unveiled the first draft of the interior of the dining hall.
Yes.
Until then, we were only looking at the external plans, which were largely intact with, what we see today and what the building was. Although there was a different entrance, we'll come to that. But it's a little bit like a cake, and you kind of see the outside with the frosting and the toppings, and then only when a slice is given to you and you look at the inside filling,
Yes.
and then you think, is this actually quite what I ordered or not?
Yes.
And you don't know what you order until you see it or taste it. So it was at that point we started to see the first internal plans, and as someone who's not an architect, it's hard to articulate necessarily what you want, but you can see what you don't want.
Yes.
And there were those earlier drafts, and this is always a process. I mean, I say this again as someone who's not an architect. You're going to go through many drafts. It's a long process, and you have to have this iteration in order to arrive at ultimately what hits on the goals, Dana, that you articulated, that John brought up at the beginning, and that early draft had. I'll let Dana expand, but this kind of dropped ceiling, and the bubbles were secondary. You almost didn't see them. You couldn't visualize them actually as part of that space in the center. So it wasn't the old dining hall that we knew and loved, and so it started to take it in a totally different direction. And it's very hard in that moment to know what exactly is happening. Before you realize you get on a train and you're going in a different direction. Is this right, the direction
Yes.
you're going in? Do you stop it? How do you know that that's the problem? So I remember at that point I reached out to Dana because you were just about to get on the board. And Dana and I met over a very long walk in Lower Manhattan, and we were going through the High Line as well. And we spoke maybe for 2 hours or something. Yes. And one of the things that Dana asked me is why, what can I add value to? Why would you why do you want me on the board? And I said, look, Dana, we have a number of critical building projects coming up. We have a world-class architect firm that we've worked with on many projects, and a general contractor, assuming we work with them again. We have an extraordinary building and grounds head with Jeff Galley, and a top-notch team with our CFO Matt Sheehy, who coordinates with all these people. But it takes a village, and everyone needs to have eyes on these critical projects because they're going to last 100 years, and they're going to affect so many parts of our community. And you have a different eye on this. You're an architect, but you're also a parent, and you understand the community from that perspective, where there's a real living moments that as students and families, as they come and gather in those special moments like commencement, have an appreciation for. So you have this holistic view and an eye that we need also as part of these projects. And so you have no choice but to join our Building and Grounds Committee.
She did give me no choice.
And so, so when those early drafts were coming through, I remember sending one to Dana and saying, look, Dana, I can't quite put my finger on it. I don't know what it is, but something's not quite sitting right. What do you think? And I remember she, I think you took a day or something to respond to me, and I figured, you were busy or something like that. I later found out, you were having this own internal agonizing. Do I tell her? Do I not tell her? And so she rang me, and as diplomatic and eloquent as Dana always is, she very, very well took me through a vision of what that draft meant in 3D live color television, and explained what it was doing to the light and what it was doing to that sense of one as you walk into the building, which it wasn't able to fulfill. And as I heard those words, and I thought, oh my goodness, she's spot on. And so I remember I rang you, and I said, John, we need to have a call with Dana, because what I just heard, I can't unhear.
Yes.
And I
I
remember
remember that.
calling you, and I think I added you
I was
onto the
thinking
call
to
as
myself,
well.
but you haven't told me yet, so I haven't heard it, so I'm okay.
Yeah.
You're the one.
And I'm thinking, no, I know what's coming.
Yeah.
And as it turned out, you too were sitting a bit uneasy with some of the earlier drafts. So each of us independently were. And then when we gathered on that call, and I'll never forget, because you took your laptop, I think, and you walked out the back door of this office, and you said, hang on, let me just go see the space. And we were on this three-way live call. You walked over with your laptop, I guess with the plans on it. You went into the center of the dining hall, and you were looking around as Dana was explaining everything. And you were quiet, actually, you were very quiet. And then it was like it was like a, I don't know, a book fell on the floor, and in a moment where you realized, yeah, these in violets, these non-negotiables, these things are not
Yes.
yet being met.
Yes.
And that was a crucial moment because
Yeah.
that meant we had to go in a pivot and a different direction from where the early drafts start, which is normal.
Yes.
But it's unusual, I think, that the three of us came together so so sure and convinced in that moment and unanimous that was an imperative pivot that we had to do.
Yeah.
But why don't you, expand on what the early drafts? What do you think?
Okay, well, before I answer the question about the early drafts and what the
Yeah.
significance is of that, I think there's sort of two life lessons, Leila, that you hit on there that are some of the most challenging parts of being an adult in life. So one, I think, is this whole concept of sway. You know the term sway, right? So when you have a lot invested already in a direction,
Yes.
to be able to recognize that maybe this direction that I've invested everything
Yes.
in isn't the right direction, and to then sway, both individually and then as a group, a board of trustees, leader of an institution, is one of the hardest things
Yes.
to do. And you have a lot of momentum. And with previous drafts, as they get presented to multiple people who are all invested in a process and everyone's excited about it, to then sort of look at it again with a critical eye and say, maybe this isn't the right way to go,
Yes.
is a really tough thing to do. And I think that, in life, to be able to do that, that's one of the most critical, that's what makes great leaders
Yes.
and great institutions, is that they can recognize when a direction that they've chosen or that they've considered to go in isn't the right direction,
Yes.
and they can pivot. And I feel like that what you just described is that kind of a pivot, where you had a lot of momentum going in a direction. And among the three of us, I think we gained strength from each other in
Yes.
being able to say, okay, we all agree this might not be the right draft to go
Yes.
with, so let's back up. So that's one. The second thing that you talked about is the team of professionals who were engaged to lead the project, right? And you have architects and engineers, you have facilities, people here who are in charge of your building projects. And as a client and a customer, and this goes for anything you do in life, you rely on other experts. You're never the expert in everything. So
Yes.
you're always relying on other people to help you see the sort of the expert opinion in
Yes.
something. And I think to be a good client and a good adult person in life is to question the experts and to
Yes.
push the experts and to help the experts see what you care about most.
Yes.
Because they can't naturally understand what you care about most unless you constantly have that kind of back and forth, right? So I think that the architects and the team working on this project, they had so many criteria to fulfill. There were extreme desires for this project. The expansion, I think what people don't really see in this building is that you're on a very limited footprint.
Yes.
Wedged in between Rochot and the gym and the quad and Albany Road, right? You have Hitchcock House
Yes.
and Little Brown House. So the footprint is very small. And the the desires for this project
Yes.
were huge,
Yes.
right? You wanted a student center and gathering spaces for students and faculty dining and an expanded kitchen and a servery that can function two totally different ways, right, for both sit-down meals and walk-through meals. And then you wanted to be able to seat 700 people at tables in one single space, right? So this is it's like fitting, an elephant in a mouse's hole,
Yes.
right? And I think that the experts, the consultants, and the team that you hired to do this were all responding to all these desires that you wanted to fit into this.
Yes.
And to do so required some gymnastics with how they laid out the building, right? And I think the draft had the building turned 90 degrees
Yes.
to try to fit that, right? It allowed for more expansion room, so the building footprint actually could get bigger that way. And what that meant is that the dining room itself would span east-west instead of north-south.
Yes.
And that's what you're talking about, where the bubbles were no longer readable because the
There
bubbles...
were no bubbles
There
at
were
one
no
point.
bubbles.
The
Basically,
entrance was a bubble.
yes.
The entrance,
second
yes,
entrance.
the
Yes.
entrance was a bubble
Exactly.
facing Albany Road, because we
Yes,
pivoted
yes.
the entrance to
Yes.
Albany.
Yes.
And we were thinking about moving Little Brown House and Hitchcock
Yes.
at one point
Yes.
to open up kind of
Yes.
the view shed.
Yes. And that's sort of an instance where you say, okay, it's the tail wagging the dog,
Yes.
right? When you go so far down something that it requires other pieces to be severely affected,
Yes.
it should set off an alarm
Yes,
bell, right?
yes.
It says, okay, did we have to do that, right? So when the building pivoted, the entrance became facing Albany Road, which some could make an argument is a great thing because that's your central spine, and now your dining hall faces the central
Yes.
circulation axis, and it faces the main campus and all that. And that there's some merits to that,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But it meant that that the south bubble became the servery, right? So you lost those tall windows, you lost the view to the hills to the south by pivoting the building around.
Yes.
And one of the things from a campus plan point of view that I think was discussed at that time is, there's the merit of having the entrance face the main part of campus where everybody's coming from, but it doesn't really address the wonderful feeling of going into this quad where Rochot and Simmons and D'Annunzio are, which is a smaller quad,
Yes.
where now you have this amazing gathering space for the dining hall. You have sort of a decompression from the large quad to the small quad as you enter the dining hall. And that's one of the beautiful features that existed from day one. So the feeling in 1948 when you entered it was not
Yes.
from the main quad. And that remains today. And I think that sequence of going into the smaller quad and having the really, now we have this wonderful platform out front for the entrance. So you have an outdoor gathering space.
Yes.
Or rather, an outdoor backpack gathering space.
Yes.
And then going into the lobby that's compressed, and then you open up into the dining room itself, right? So,
Sorry, go ahead.
It's hard. It's important to remember that design with the bubble facing Albany Road, which was going to be the entrance, and the new dining hall, as you said, reoriented without the bubbles. We were pretty far down the road on that.
I was about to say.
We were very,
Yeah.
very far down on the road on that.
Yeah. I remember there was a senior parent campaign tied to, the first one tied to the dining hall, where there were some print brochures. And because we were already thinking that was going to change, we had to ask for some images to be pulled, which showed that new exterior and the interior. And there were some other renderings. There was a rendering also of I guess, what is that, the east side here, which was, we thought, largely probably not going to change. And there's an aerial picture,
Yes.
I think, also, right? So it was far down the road, and from different constituents on campus to in that sense, you're spot on, Dana. When you're moving in a certain direction, it's oftentimes hard to jump off that train because it's tying into, the senior parent campaign and advancement and with fundraising.
Huge pressures,
And
yes.
you're tying it into other projects on campus, and you're on a strict timeline because if you push one thing, it could push the other thing and end up being a whole domino effect. So, I remember right around the time. So we had that call, right, when you walked in with your laptop, and we all knew what that meant. And I remember I had a couple sleepless nights around that time, but I remember thinking about that domino effect, what it might mean for fundraising and timing and all these things. And I rang up two of my predecessors, Phil Greer and John Lewis. Jeff Lewis. Sorry, Jeff Lewis. I'm thinking his father. We were talking about his father last night. And Jeff Lewis. And Jeff told me the story when I don't think he was president of the board at the time. He was head of building and grounds at the time. And they had a project for the squash courts. And Bob Dewey was making a generous gift for the squash courts. And the original plan for the squash courts had no windows, not a single window. So, and when they came in to discuss it, Jeff was told there can be no changes, absolutely no changes. This is done and dusted, and he's like, well, why am I here? And he took the point. He's like, but how could there be no windows? He said, you don't understand the way the fire exits have to work as part of this space. This was the only way that we could manage it. So he asked for a pair of scissors, and he took the plan and he cut out the squash courts from the plan, and he rearranged it on the footprint of the dimensions that were given to him, and he said, well, here, you can get two exits positioned this way, and this whole wall can be windows. And they kind of looked at it and turned it around and said, yeah, maybe that could work. And we have these gorgeous squash courts.
Yes.
But Jeff told me the story to say,
Yeah.
if something's not right, you push, and you have the conviction to push. Because, Leila, no one's going to care if you guys get this right 50 years down the road. But they will care deeply if you get it wrong.
Yes.
And so these are these once-in-a-lifetime projects
Yes.
that come along.
Yes.
And you must get it right.
Right.
And so I never forgot those words, and Phil Greer said the same thing. And so I knew we only had one choice. I mean, even though
Yeah.
we had some architecture fees that were already paid, and we had, the timeline of what was going on from advancement
Yes.
perspective and everything else, even 5 years from now, people don't think about those things.
Yeah.
But they do look at what could or could not have been. I don't want to, eyesore is too strong a
Yes.
word, but
It's a testament to, from my perspective as the head of school, it's a testament to the tremendous decision-making strength of the board. That is to say, we have a board where there are norms of deliberation and openness and honesty that allow us to make sure we're making the right decision and putting pressure on our own thinking, and that's a tremendous asset for a board to have a culture of where you can talk about things. And
John,
your reliance on former board chairs is also kind of brilliant in its own way, because there's just a lot of wisdom to be tapped there.
I mean, they bring huge institutional knowledge, and it's incumbent upon me, I feel, to use that and rely upon that when I need
Yes.
to. But John, you were a critical part of this because there are many headmasters who could have said, well, look, we started down this project. There'll be too many things impacted and too many changes to have to make, and put pressure in another way to just continue in that direction. And oftentimes, if you have kind of these conflicting parties, it's very hard to go in a different direction. So
Yeah.
you were very clear-eyed. And when, again, I keep going back when you walked in with your laptop, because when you heard it, at the end of the day, your vision is so true to what is best for the students. And what is best for the students is thinking about those things like light and community and bringing everyone together in a space and doing justice to what that building was always about for generations of students. So this was very much first and foremost, I think, in your heart. When you hear something like that, you're too intellectually honest to ever veer away from something that would go against those type of standards.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with what you said about the board. but I think you would have had none of it either. So,
Yeah, that's interesting, Leila, because when I think about the role here, one of the things I struggle with is like decision-making overload. Like you have like dozens and dozens and dozens of decisions coming across your desk every day, and they're all important and they're all consequential in their own ways. But really, it's over the course of a headship, you only have a few that are actually really significant over the longer future of the school. And a building like this is one of them. It's like we're going to marry that building for the next 100 years. Yeah, it's not even just a marriage for 40 or 50 years. It's a marriage for 100 years. And I think we did get to the point in our deliberations where if we were certain of one thing, it's that we wanted to do this right, and that kind of overrode all of the noise that you're hearing as you're trying to make the right decision.
100%.
And it's not only the story of a great building, but it's also a kind of case study in how I think boards and heads, and to the great credit of our architects and our own operational leadership, Matt and Jeff and so many others, can come together to do what's right for the longer term interests of the school. So it was a very expensive building. And I have a question for each of you on this topic. It came in on time and on budget. So, Leila, why do you think the project sold itself? That is to say, why do you think the alumni and our parents, I'll leave the parent piece of this to Dana in a second, got behind this with the speed that they did? Sometimes raising money for a building of this importance and scale can take a long time, and we did it pretty fast and pretty effectively. So why do you think the community rallied in the way that it did?
Yeah, and to your point, it kind of became a snowball effect in many ways. I think first of all, it's not just any building. This is, when I think back to my time as a student, some of my best memories were in the dining hall. And, for anyone who's not part of our community at Deerfield and they hear the words dining hall, they probably think cafeteria.
Yes.
And this is anything but that. I mean, this is, and I love this expression you always use, our most important classroom. And it really is. It's the heart and soul of our campus. And the memories I have from my time as a student were about kids who I would never meet them in teams or in classes, but I had them as part of our assigned table seating with the table master, and we had friendships formed in this hall, friendships with faculty too. I mean, I had a table master who would not let us get up from the table until we solved a riddle. Every single meal, we had to solve a riddle. One of them took us almost up until study hall one night. And one of them, I remember, I told to my math teacher, Mr. Hammond, and he couldn't solve it. He got so mad at us. But these things you never forget. I remember a classmate, it was the night we also were served, it was lobster night. I guess they don't do that anymore, although I think we should bring it back.
Yeah, I like lobster.
Right? So it was lobster
I'd be
night.
happy to bring that
I think we
back.
had someone donate 20 years worth of lobsters or something and endowed it for a 20-year program. But anyway, I was...
The lobster endowment.
Right.
We should do that again.
Everybody needs a crustacean endowment.
But my classmate, she was sitting next to me, and we were both coming from abroad, and neither of us had lobster before. We didn't know how to pull apart the legs and how to get the inside out and everything. We just looked at that, and there were the tools next to us, and some of the other kids at the table showed us what to do. I think one actually even took my lobster and dismembered it for me, so I could enjoy finally eating it. But these were our best memories. So this wasn't just any building. This is where we laughed and cried, and right after games, we came and celebrated together. When we found out about colleges, we were there and told each other, and we studied there. And so I think alumni got behind this because everyone had their version of memories in that building. And there's also something very special about food, and this is different to dorms
Yes.
and other types of gathering places. I mean, I actually do think we can solve the world's problems around a dinner table. And I
Yes.
think for many families, each in their own way, gathering at meal times is a critical part as you grow up with families and cousins and friends. And so there's a great community effect to that. That's something that we can all share. It's a great commonality as we come together. And
Yes.
those moments, they're so memorable, they're so emotional, they're so impactful. I think it was the easiest thing in the world, especially when we say this in hindsight, to raise money for, because it's our most important building on campus. So, yeah.
Yeah. Dana, why do you think it appealed to our parents? Obviously, Ambassador Johnson and Suzanne were our lead donor, and the class of 2023,
Four.
broke every kind of fundraising goal that we had. Why do you think that was the case?
I think that the dining hall, for the reasons that Leila just described, would have garnered kind of unlimited support.
Yes.
No matter what.
Yeah.
But I think we also hit it at a very critical moment that in history, right? So the class of 2024 arrived on campus fall of 2020. So it was the height of the pandemic.
Yes.
Schools were shutting down. Young people were being taken away from their community of friends, right? Zooming into school and all of that. And you led this school through the pandemic in a way that I didn't witness with any other educational institution in terms of prioritizing in-person, the importance of real-life connection with other human beings, right? And so that was the climate where our children, the class of 2024, arrived on this campus. And in every single policy and move that was made through the course of our son's education here, it was this constant reinventing of how you run a school, how you foster student experience, student connection to faculty in an in-person way, in a world where in-person didn't exist anymore. And so in some ways, that environment gave a kind of clarity to the importance of what you talk about with sit-down dinner, right? Sit-down meals. So I think the emphasis on sit-down meals is absolutely correct, but shining the light on it after it was taken away from people, the idea of not being able to be together, really heightened that appreciation, I think, for many people, and especially the class of 2024. And I think that the asking for support from that class, there are two pieces of that. One is a deep appreciation and gratitude that their children benefited from that.
Yes.
And wanting to express that. And then the other piece is that clarity that came out of the experience of the pandemic.
Yes.
How important sit-down meals really are.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you had both of those things happening at the same time.
Yeah. COVID was very clarifying.
Yes.
It's hard to remember that there was a time when every residential boarding school in the country probably had sit-down meals, and probably had sit-down meals like 3 times a day. And then over this long sweep of history, as schools got bigger and their dining rooms didn't grow, and for lots of other reasons, they kind of fell by the wayside. And for whatever reason, Deerfield continued the tradition through my predecessors. But then when we arrived at COVID, we got a glimpse into what a school would look like without binding ritual. And the sense of loss was, palpable, which is why we pivoted into in-school, in-person learning as quickly as we possibly could. But COVID was hugely clarifying, and it's a remarkable tradition. Why? Go ahead, Dana.
Yeah. Well, I think that the two things we talk about sit-down meals as though everyone understands.
Yes.
The benefit. And I think people do because of sort of the family-style dinner idea and all of that. But they're two things for young people, like at this stage, that I think, maybe it's saying what's obvious, but to me are so important. So one is, young people, a 15-year-old choosing who to sit with at a meal.
Yes. Is
this very kind of pressure-inducing social project every time that comes to be.
Yes.
And the desire to always sit with your friends or to sit with the cool kids or whatever it is, there's something that happens in that having to choose who to sit with.
Yes.
Right? So you're arriving with your cafeteria tray and deciding where to sit. And I think that style of dining on a regular basis fosters cliques because people always sit with people who they already know, right? And it also fosters a kind of hierarchy because they're the popular kids who get more people sitting with them and that kind of thing. And so the sit-down meal just blasts through all of that and takes that away.
It does.
So that's one thing. And then the other thing that just strikes me so powerfully in what Deerfield does is that the timeline for the rotations of sit down. So it's assigned seating, right? And you're assigned to a specific table for something like three weeks.
Yes.
And if you imagine that rotation happening for a 4-year student, right, and you take your population of 650 students, it really means that every student has sat and dined with the majority of students in this school. And so the fact that they...
And teachers.
Yes.
That they have had an interaction with almost everybody here changes the feeling
completely
of their relationship to the community.
Yeah.
Those things to me are,
Yeah.
You say sit-down meal, but it doesn't totally get to the significance of what that is. Right.
Yes.
I'm going to add one thing you mentioned, John, which is very true, this point about the lack of sit-down meals or the fact that a lot of other schools have abandoned it over the years. And our lead donor for the project, Ambassador Johnson, I don't know if I should tell the story, but when he came to campus for his son's graduation with Mrs. Johnson, and the commencements were so special. Like I think I've done 3 of them now with you, and they're you don't have to have your child even graduating, and you can feel how emotional and just incredibly special those days are. And there's a huge amount of pomp and circumstance with the processional that comes down Albany Road. And so I think, through that whole day, and he had heard you speak, and I think it was a senior parent campaign, he probably heard you speak as well about the Dining Hall Project, and hearing about this sense of tradition and community that's at the focal point of our sit-down meals. I remember he came up to me after the commencement and said, he was considering another project at the time, and he said, Leila, we're not going to do that other project. And I remember my heart sank. And he said, but we want to do the dining hall. And his eyes lit up, and I know it resonated very strongly with him. Yes. The importance of traditions and communities, and being able to sustain them and protect them, and have generations of students enjoy them and have the same experience his own son had, because you can't find that anywhere else, and it's incredibly unique. And so I think that was part of that moment and snowball effect, in a way, where being on campus and seeing and feeling how that community comes together and seeing those moments in the dining hall, it's very hard for that to resonate unless you're an alumni. And so when you're on campus, especially as a parent, it really all comes together in a way, I think, that just engendered so much support for the project.
Yeah. what is your favorite feature of the new dining hall? Like, what's one piece of it that you
It's the bubble.
love?
Of course, it's the bubbles. I mean,
Yeah.
I love the bubbles, but I love them much more now because they just feel taller, more vast.
Yes.
And those kind of 1980s curtains, the heavy curtains that used to be there.
Yes.
Or at least that I remember as a
Yes.
student, I think they were there. And they kind of dimmed the whole space and the
Yes.
light and felt a bit dreary. And that's all gone because we have these beautiful automatic blinds that can come
Yes.
down, which you can still see through and have the light enter. And so for me, that's the most dramatic feature. And you feel so much more part of the campus because you can really see in and out all the windows
Yes.
through that space. And so that just fills me with like goosebumps when
Yeah.
I walk in now. That's my,
Yeah. What about you, Dana?
Well, it's similar. I think that the feeling of the dining room with its light and views
Yes.
is really spectacular.
Yes.
And the curtains, you're spot on, because the curtains on the south bubble were closed all the time.
Yes.
So this idea that you would have a view to the hills and that you'd have light
Yes.
streaming in actually was never experienced for,
Yes.
I mean, for many years it wasn't experienced. And now, it's this open, you see all the way
The
from
cathedral windows
Yes.
that go all
Yes.
the way to the length of
south
the
over the
ceiling.
tennis courts,
Yes.
all the way north through the campus.
Yes.
That transparency is really spectacular.
Yeah.
I have to pick a second one because Dana was really instrumental in this, and it's the employee cafeteria. And I remember, I don't know, at least 3 Zoom calls that we were on with the architects, and they're really an extraordinary group of architects. But as we all know, you have to push for things.
Yes.
And a lot of times as you get down the road on something, you don't necessarily want to make changes. But the initial drafts had the employee cafeteria windows probably half the size, and they were so high up, almost like cell windows in a way, but with barely enough light, you'd have the impression that could come in. And the ground, I guess, was raised much higher.
Yes.
So it was a totally different look and feel. And Dana kept harping on about, well, hang on, I want to go back to the windows, and I want to go down to the gradation of the
Yes.
land, of the grass outside, and she spent a lot of time asking about drainage, because drainage, I think, was one of the issues that had to do with the slope of the land out there and why the
Yes.
windows could not quite work because of how the water would gather.
Yes.
And I remember Dana going, and this is far more than I would ever understand about gradients of slopes, but it was because Dana at every call would bring it up and was not satisfied with the answer that the windows had to stay that small, that high up, and that all the faculty and staff, when the faculty are not at sit-down meals, couldn't enjoy the same
Yes.
kind of sense of space
Yeah.
and light
Yes.
and this vastness. And so that really stands out to me, too. I think the complement of it also was when you question the ceiling height, because there's going to be a dropped ceiling, and the idea of taking that all out and having this kind of exposed, almost industrial look.
Yeah.
But it's so beautifully done
Yes,
with the
it
lighting,
is.
and it again creates the sense of vastness. So I think that employee cafeteria is gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as everybody knows, winter at Deerfield can get a little gloomy sometimes when the sun sets at 3:45. And I remember when we opened the dining hall, the first sit-down lunch after we returned from the Christmas holiday, the light in the space was just so amazing. And it's not just the windows, it's also the skylight, which I understand has all kinds of like sci-fi,
Yes.
supernatural abilities in terms of how it lights a space. And also the new colors, the removal of the curtains,
Yes.
but also
Yeah.
the paint, right?
Yeah.
the way it's been
Lifts
painted.
up.
It just bursts with color, and for the winter, it's incredibly important for
Yeah.
kids to have access to that.
Can I say something a bit blasphemous?
Yeah.
The murals, in the
Yes,
entrance.
yes.
So actually, I would say whether it's third or one of my favorite, but, and it's terrible, I can't remember his name now, the Deerfield student who painted in the lower level where the salad bar area
Beautiful.
is, which is gorgeous. I love that.
Yes,
I,
it's
I
beautiful.
wish in some ways that was in place instead of the murals.
Yes,
And-
that is blasphemous, Leila.
Yes, the number of alumni we know
Yeah.
who cared about the
Yes.
murals and making sure
Yeah.
that they would be there.
Yeah.
I do think, John, that you have to You should have a little didactic information about those murals.
Yes.
I was asking the designers about the murals. They're from original woodblock prints printed on wallpaper,
Yes.
right? And they depict historical events
Yes.
with some kind of license, like it mixes different
Yes.
references, right?
Yes.
But I do think it would be good to write something about the significance of those.
Yes, we can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. Any final thoughts?
Well, we didn't get to ask you, John, about.
I'm not being interviewed. I'm the interviewer here. Can we just be clear about that?
I am the board president.
Very true. I stand corrected.
Okay, I just before kind of walking in here, we were chatting. I was chatting with Jess Day, and she said, well, on to the next project, and I thought to
Yes.
myself, no, let's enjoy the glory still of the dining hall. But it does. It raises the bar for all of us.
Yeah.
I think that's a fantastic thing. Like I never want us to settle for second best on
Yes.
anything. Building project, strategic directions, anything you want to have for the academy, for these generation of students to come, and I want the board to be able to support that. And you have such a clear-eyed vision about these things. But it raises the bar, I think, for us even higher, and there's a responsibility and the sense of duty as we think about, the series of projects that are going to unfold after this.
Yes.
And I guess if it was 23, I guess I'm in my fourth year as president. And so I do think a lot about the group of people on the board and working with you and how to ensure that there is a continuity of this collaboration and
Yes.
this sense of excellence and never settling and always pushing. And as I think about the projects that are going to happen in the future, I'm grateful that you are still early on your tenure, and so there is that sense of continuity in terms of working with Ben Clark and Building and Grounds and the whole team, and with Jeff Galley and Matt Sheehy. So I do think a lot about that, and I hope that continues
Yeah.
very much. Yeah.
Dana, any last thoughts?
Well, I think for me, thinking about these building projects, the dining hall is an easy one to see how what you're doing physically and what you're doing in terms of your investment is supporting a programmatic
Yes.
priority.
Yes.
And I think that looking at every building project, the campus as a whole, as a tool for supporting your programmatic
Yes.
priorities is really important. And I think this board now, with a very serious and comprehensive campus master plan, long-term campus
Yes.
master plan, and with the emphasis on the next initiatives that support all of your programming, I think that continuing to think about all your building projects, not as building projects, but as tools in achieving your goals from a
Yes,
programmatic and student
absolutely.
experience point of view is
Absolutely.
really important.
Yeah.
And I think you're doing an amazing job really clarifying what those
Yes.
priorities are, which makes the job of the rest of the team
Yes. Yeah.
easy in
Thank you.
knowing what to do.
Well,
So,
thank you both for your incredible leadership, and congratulations.
Well, congratulations to
Yeah.
you and
Yes.
to Deerfield.
Yeah.